From transfers to tournaments, today's episode is stacked. Olivia Smith makes history with the biggest transfer in women's soccer. We're going to break down what that means. Canadian women's national team player Jordyn Huitema joins the show as well. Plus, we're going to play a game of fair or foul. We're testing the spiciest NSL takes. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Just Soccer. I'm your host, Andi Petrillo. Joining me is CBC Sports senior contributor Jordyn Huitema. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Andi?
I'm great. We have a lot to get into. If you couldn't tell by that intro, and right out of the gate, we have to talk Olivia Smith. They are this close, as of the taping of this show, this close to signing a deal, completing a world record £1 million transfer for the Canadian star Olivia Smith to Arsenal, currently playing for Liverpool. That would be the most ever for a woman. We know back at the start of the year in January, Chelsea set that record, 900,000 for Girma. But now the Canadian Olivia Smith is going to surpass that. What was your reaction actually when you heard that news?
Okay, so hindsight is 2020, but I wasn't surprised. Look, Olivia Smith has been on everyone's radar. She's 20. And the fact, this is telling of a lot of pieces here. We know Girma's amazing. She's U.S. superstar, captain, et cetera, et cetera. What this is telling me is that Arsenal sees potential. They see potential that is so unmatched at this level that they're willing to put out £1 million. Andi, that's a lot of crumpets and cream.
What is that? Like, it's close to 2 million Canadian, right? So that's a lot of Timbits.
It's a lot of Timbits. So, I mean, I think what this says, it's also a nod to the Canadian soccer ecosystem, which I think is something that gets slept on the world stage. Yes, absolutely. You know, we can boast Sinky, but there is a lot of excellent soccer here, and women's soccer in particular. And what this does is also put Canada and Canadian soccer in the forefront, which I think is overdue.
For a lot of people who probably don't follow women's soccer, they might say, okay, this is great because there's Canadian pride there, but why Olivia Smith? Like, why is she the one who's going to set this record?
One of the things that I love about Olivia Smith is she's young, she's eager to learn, she's super coachable. All the coaches of the national program that I've spoken to who have coached her have said this. She's got this very high IQ on the pitch, works well with the team, has a lot of international exposure at this point, played in Portugal, has played in England, with the top premium teams. But there's something I really like about her. It's a quiet swagger. Olivia walks with a purpose. I mean, we all remember the video that when, at the time before the Women's World Cup, she was 18 years old, DB Pridham added her and she told her, and it was this emotional moment. She was 18 years old, going her first massive tournament. And I think that there's something to be said about that. There's a humility that she has, but also this confidence when she plays. And there's something to be said about the way she can work with others and control the field at the same time, but walks knowing who she is.
And I think that's exactly a potential. She hasn't even hit her ceiling yet. And with Liverpool, she's been scoring goals. She's won internal awards, but in the WSL, she was nominated. She was shortlisted for Player of the Year and Young Player of the Year. So turning heads in the WSL, where you have a lot of superstars who are playing there, and to be shortlisted for those awards, I think is a really big deal. I think if you're going to maybe look and say, okay, where can she improve? And this is not a player's fault, Jordyn, but obviously, covering the women's national team, Olivia Smith steps onto the pitch and we always get excited. And it always seems, without fail, she gets injured, right? Like, we're seeing this incredible play at the pro level. And then with the national team, unfortunately, it seems like injury woes haunt her, because you mentioned that World Cup, which is amazing, but then she didn't make the Olympic team. She had struggled, with injuries even leading into that. That DB Pridham, head coach at the time, didn't feel confident in selecting her. I don't even know how you fix that, because she's young. She's getting used to her body as well, right?
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. There's a series of unfortunate knocks that she's had just before. And, but doing so well in Europe, being, like you said, shortlisted for major awards. Now, I will say this. I do have a history of, being favoring Arsenal, but they're a serious club. There's a history out there. But the reality is that club is one of the top women's clubs in the world and
Mm-mm.
invests in this. So we're looking not just as Olivia as a player, but as a person, as a player as well, who can bring a certain culture to one of the top, arguably top women's teams in the entire world. And from my sources tell me, Olympique Lyon was also really, really interested in her. And we know what their history is with the women's game.
When you look at global superstars, um, could she be one? Can she be in the conversation with Christine Sinclair when you talk about her potential?
Absolutely. One of the things that's a little different here is that, like, the timing. I mean, Sinky came in at a different time in the women's game. I mean, the WSL wasn't as prominent, and Sinky in her own right is a legend in Portland. But what we're going to see from Olivia, and this is my prediction, she's going to conquer Europe. And like literally conquer Europe. So which is kind of what go from Canada and conquer Europe. There is that much support, protection, and investment in her. And I say investment because realistically, that's what it is. It's an investment in her potential and who she
Mm.
is and what she can bring. I really hope that gets reflected back into the Canadian national program as well.
Let's switch on over to the Northern Super League now because the league is back after an international break. And we're going to play a little game of fair or foul. It's the first time we're playing it here. Shireen, you have the honors of being the first guest. And this is all about our spiciest thoughts on the NSL. So, foul, of course, means you're not having it. Fair means you like it. Okay, so let's take a look at the table. AFC Toronto sitting in first. At the beginning of the season, they struggled, but they're looking very good. So is it fair or foul to say that Toronto is the team to beat?
Okay, so I'm actually going to go with fair on this one. I do think Toronto is the team to beat. However, caveat, um, we're 1/3 through the season. That's it. So
Mm.
it's a long season for the Northern Super League, and we're not actually sure what could happen. The table looks very different than it did, say, a month ago. So I do think there's a certain amount of pressure on whoever sits in first. But in the middle of May, I had interviewed Coach Marco in a presser, or asked him a question rather, and I asked him about the table because Toronto wasn't actually doing AFC. Toronto wasn't that high, and he said it's too early. I don't even look at the table. I mean, all managers say that they don't look at the table, but everyone looks at the table. But the reality is, like, I think there's something to be said about that. That it's too
Mm-hmm.
early in the season. What's it going to look like? And the flip side is, I think that Halifax being on the bottom of the table,
Mm.
I don't actually think there's a huge amount of pressure for them. There's like, because nobody puts pressure on the underdog, Andy. And
Okay. Okay. Says the person who's from Halifax.
um, um, um,
Well, okay. Wait a second. Wait a second. So fair, Toronto's the team to beat. So why don't we talk about the Halifax Tides here? Because they've made some changes here. But to your point, it's not been good for them. Inaugural season, and they are the first team to make a head coaching change. Stephen Hart, former coach with Canada Soccer, former coach of the CPL, is now the interim coach. And guess what? They've won back-to-back games. But dare I ask you, is it fair or foul to say that this team is under the most pressure of all after these changes? I know you said maybe bottom of the table, so you don't look at that, but they've made a bunch of changes. So because of that, is it fair or foul to say they have a lot of pressure?
I'm going to go foul, and only because there's a certain kind of pressure that is for a team like this.
Mm.
Yeah, Hardy's come in, has an incredible storied career, knows the game. I think there's going to make some really important changes. I think there is also a psychological element to this, that they were struggling for a long time. They've had a couple wins under the belt, which honestly, the first win they had really, really felt like they won the championship. That's how the team celebrated. The community always comes out. They're there at the Wanderers grounds. But I don't think it's the same level of pressure we'll see, just like we talked about AFC Toronto. It's a different kind of pressure. I think there'll be some expectations on Stephen Hart himself.
Mm.
But in terms of the club going forward and moving in terms of wins, again, it's really early. I hope to see them improve. Obviously, everyone loves, I mean, let's be real, everyone loves Jocelyn. Everyone loves this
Mm.
mascot and everyone wants to see her thrive. However, I think there's pressure anyway on professional teams and professional athletes also, but I don't think it's the same level it would be for a team at the top. I think they are
Mm.
the underdogs, and I think they're going to go with any momentum and carry that in their favor. And whatever wins, like really, Andy, when you're at the bottom of the table, any win is up.
Hmm. This is
So
true, and they picked up their first road win too, and is very exciting for them. And speaking of pressure, though, we're seeing a lot of goals, and one in particular, I'm sure would like to keep her lead, and that would be DB Pridham. Fair or foul to say that DB Pridham will finish as the NSL's top scorer this season?
okay, so again, foul.
Ooh.
Okay, so listen, Delaney Bay is everyone's Bay. We know this. DB is like literally like the Bay of goals. However, again, it is so early in the season. It's 1/3. Like Kaylee Hunter is like coming up there. I'm not saying it's not possible, but you can't say the most goals of the season award in the first third. Let's have this conversation again in the last third of the season and see where we are. Some of the teams are just hitting their stride now. Their players are just getting in sync with the rest of the team. They're just hitting that point where they're starting to come out. And I mean, yes, like DB has a bunch of goals, like absolutely, and they're bangers, they're incredible. But I don't think we've seen, this isn't the end of the story. This is just the beginning.
Love to see that race continue. Just on a side note, when it comes to Kaylee Hunter, when AFC Toronto returned from the international break, picked up a brace against Ottawa. If I were to ask you to look into your crystal ball, just because she is sitting second as well when it comes to goals scored, I mean, do you think this is somebody Casey Stoney is keeping an eye on and could get a call up to Canada?
Absolutely. I think we've seen Casey Stoney and the precedent she's setting by looking at younger players, looking at NSL talent. Hunter's 17, and the only reason she wasn't at the championship winning team for the under-20 Women's World Cup was because she had an unfortunate knock. She had a little bit of a knock before, so wasn't able to do it. Otherwise, has been on the U17 squad, was looking to make the U20. She's 17. I mean, my goodness, the history again. She's even younger than Olivia Smith. But the potential, and I think it's someone that Casey Stoney, who has a precedent for doing this, is definitely. She's at a lot of these matches. She's keeping her eye. She's watching a lot of film and looking for who she thinks. I mean, Casey Stoney invariably is still playing around with her own roster. So, I mean, I would be very surprised if Kaylee Hunter doesn't get a call up.
All right, well, we know that the Canadian women will be back in action in the fall, so we'll be looking forward to that. Meantime, we'll watch the Golden Boot race in the NSL. Always a pleasure catching up with you, Shireen. That is Shireen Ahmed joining us here on Just Soccer. And to continue with the theme of the Canadian women's national soccer team, I had a chance to catch up with Jordyn Huitema. Jordyn, how would you describe this current Canadian women's national team?
I'd say it's new. I think it's like very fresh. I think that we have a lot of maturity and still some veterans on the team who've been around for 10 plus years. But then we also have this new group of fresh faces who kind of bring just like a newness to the team. And that's exciting. I mean, like we need to start developing the future of what Canada soccer will be in however many years. And I think that's kind of what Casey's been doing. So I think it's exciting and it's cool to really watch these younger players come in. And I think you kind of see yourself in them, like especially as a player who started very young as well. You kind of see how you felt in that moment and you can kind of relate to them. So you try to like give a helping hand or just be, supportive in a certain way just to like make them feel a little bit more comfortable because that was you however many years ago. But it's been really exciting to watch them kind of come in and the excitement that they have being involved in camp and players turning in from training players to making roster spots. I think that's exciting and just watching their reactions is really, it brings a smile on my face.
Let's talk domestically. The Northern Super League has launched in Canada. And what are the conversations like with the national team about finally having a pro league at home?
It's just exciting. I think we've been wanting it for so long, and it's been something that I feel like Canada has deserved for so long that I think that Diana kind of putting that into flow was huge. And I think getting even some of these players involved in that is really exciting, and they can kind of give like a first hand on how it is going and like the behind the scenes of everything. And obviously it is like a startup, so it is first year and like there's going to be little kinks that come up, but like they're getting smoothed out and the league just looks like it's rolling already, and it's already been rolling for like 5+ years. Like, it seems like it's ahead of its time, just being the first year kind of being launched, which is really exciting. And I think like we would love to be a league that one day kind of sets the tone and kind of sets the bar for other leagues around the world. And I think that Canada has the ability to do that. And I think just like the fan base that we can grow and go support women's sports, I think is huge and is very unique. And I'm excited to continue watching it grow. And I think it's been deserved from this country for so long.
For those who may not know, you've had a rough couple of months because of the home invasion, which you've been very open about. Took some time for yourself. How important was it for you to step away and choose yourself?
Yeah, it's huge. I think like for me, when it initially happened, I kind of chose everyone else. Like, I chose the team and I chose to stay and I chose to play and I tried to just like give everything. And like that just wore me down even more without even like really realizing it. I was kind of just like slipping away from myself. Um, and I was just exhausted. Like it was really just, I'm very bad at choosing myself. I'm very bad at putting myself first in situations where I should. And I'm learning to do that. So I definitely had a really amazing conversation with Casey when I was in camp. Um, and kind of just like explaining where I was at. And she kind of agreed that I just should take a step away, which was helpful as well for a person who feels like in a way that's like giving up, but like it's not. And I think like in a way, I'd never like to wave my white flag and kind of say that I'm down. So for her to kind of step in as well and say like, no, like you should take a step away, having that support and like feeling that was just like, okay, like this is the right decision. So yeah, I stepped away for about a week and just went home and just spent some time with my parents and my siblings, and it was really nice. It was just like a really good reset, something that I really needed, and I didn't need to be that long. Like, it didn't need to be months. And I think that if had I let it just continue to spiral, it could have turned into something where it needed to be a longer term thing. But for me, all I needed in that moment was a week. But I think like everyone's so different, and it might be a week for me, but it might be a month for someone else, or whatever it looks like. I just think mental health is such a huge thing, and it just like contributes so much to our day to day and contributes so much into us as athletes, especially like I wasn't being myself on the field because I wasn't myself off the field, and like I was struggling so much off the field that when it was time to step on the field, my head was in a different world, and like I wasn't actually being who I was on the field, which then made me even more upset because I wasn't performing the way that I knew I could. So it's just like a snowball effect of everything. So being able to step away, obviously finding my footing again and feeling good and kind of getting back to myself and feeling like myself again, I think has been huge. And that's been really beneficial to me in the last few weeks, which has been nice. And obviously a lot of that goes to kind of taking my step back and taking a step away and taking a breath, because sometimes life does throw a lot at you, and even more than sometimes media sees. So it is important for players to just step back when they need to. And I think that it's huge that people understand that too, is just like not every aspect of our life, even though you think you see it all, you don't. And it's just like there's so much that goes on behind the scenes in our lives that isn't privy to people. So it's just like if people take a step back or need a second or take a mental leave, like just be supportive. And I'd say that's the biggest thing in media, is just like if someone needs to do that, it's just like respect that they're making that decision for a reason that you may not even know, and just like hope that they're okay, because I think that's huge. And I think athletes are so in public eye that you think that you know why they're doing something, but it's just like sometimes there's so much behind the scenes that you don't know. So I just say like be supportive, be kind, support people when they're going through something, and that's really it. But yeah, it was definitely an important step for me to take that step away.
It's now time for our viral moment of the week, and this one belongs to Chelsea. They stunned PSG in the Club World Cup final, and the star of the show, Cole Palmer. 2 goals, 1 assist, so he walked away with Player of the Tournament honors. Chelsea weren't the favorites, but Palmer stepped up on the biggest stage and reminded the world it's a cold world and we're just living in it. Big win for the Blues. Thanks for tuning in to Just Soccer. I'm your host, Andi Petrillo. We'll see you next week.